Hi, this is Heidi Rabinowitz from the Book of Life podcast. I am happy to share with you this presentation that I created for my local library, Palm Beach County Library, in honor of Jewish Book Month 2024. Just going to share some slides with you. Here we go. My presentation is called Cheering on Jewish Books because I want to cheer for Jewish books. I'm excited about them and I want you to be too. So a little about me. I'm Heidi Rabinowitz. As you can see from this slide, I used to be a children's librarian in public libraries at Pittsburgh's Carnegie Library and in Broward County, Florida at the North Regional Library. But for many years now, I have been a synagogue librarian at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida. I didn't grow up with any formal Jewish education. My family were bagel Jews, but I've become passionate about Jewish books over the years. And in fact, I've been podcasting about Jewish books at the Book of Life podcast, doing author interviews for almost 20 years. So I'm here talking to you today because I want to get you excited about Jewish books, and I'm going to explain why. First, let's define what we mean by a Jewish book. It can mean different things to different people. So obviously the most famous foundational Jewish book is the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, as well as other religious texts like the Talmud. But a Jewish book doesn't have to be religious. After all, Judaism is an ethno-religion. It is a culture that has its own religion. So a Jewish book might be a book by a Jewish author, may or may not have Jewish content. A book with Jewish characters or set in a Jewish community would be a Jewish book. A book that takes place during a Jewish holiday or a life cycle event like a bar mitzvah or a wedding. It might be very overt in its Jewish representation, or it might be more casual and minimal. It might even be so subtle that it could go unnoticed by some readers. For instance, a book in which a character has a Jewish name, but that's the only Jewish representation. I want to take a moment to point out that Judaism does not proselytize, proselytize, and that promoting Jewish books does not have to mean promoting religious texts. As we've seen, there are many, many ways for a book to be Jewish. The First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution establishes the separation of church and state, and that means that government-funded institutions like schools and libraries must not engage in religious practices or serve religious groups unequally. But this does not mean that they have to ignore the existence of religion, or it just means that they should not host religious rituals. They should not engage in proselytizing or indoctrination. But activities that inform and educate about religion are welcome. So public libraries are free to include religious materials in their collections, and public schools are free to teach comparative religion classes, for example. When I promote Jewish books to readers of all backgrounds, I'm not trying to convert anybody. But why do I want people to read Jewish books? Well, if you are Jewish, reading these books makes you feel good. Seeing yourself represented in literature is very validating. It makes you feel seen. It makes you feel that you belong and you're part of the community. If you're not Jewish, reading these books will be interesting for you. You'll learn new things. You'll understand your Jewish neighbors better. You'll take a walk in other people's shoes and empathize with their experiences. Reading outside your own culture expands your imagination, your whole knowledge of the world. It strengthens the connections that make our society whole. But as LeVar Burton used to say on Reading Rainbow, you don't have to take my word for it. A groundbreaking article published in 1990 in a professional journal by Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, professor emerita at Ohio State University, established the idea of mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And this metaphor is now widely used in the book world among publishers, librarians, and educators. A mirror book reflects your own experience or culture back to you and helps you feel seen. A window book gives you a peek into another culture. And a sliding glass door can both reflect and let you step through to imagine yourself in another's shoes. Some of the very best books are sliding glass door books. Now, I apologize for the downer, but I have to take a moment to acknowledge the anti-Semitism crisis, because this is part of my motivation for sharing Jewish books. Anti-Semitic incidents are way up, and this was true before the October 7th, 2023 Hamas attack on Israel and Israel's subsequent military response. I am definitely not here to discuss the war and its relationship to both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. I'm sure we each have our own opinions on that situation, but suffice it to say, anti-Semitism is a huge problem these days. So it is more important than ever to support the Jewish community. And my way of doing this is through books. In the face of anti-Semitism, mirror books are more important than ever. The validation that Jewish people receive from seeing ourselves in print, especially seeing stories that depict Jewish joy, is not just a feel-good thing. It gives us hope in dark times. And in the face of anti-Semitism, Jewish window books and sliding glass door books build bridges with non-Jewish neighbors and encourage empathy. And that's not just nice, it's necessary for safety and for justice. So if you agree, I hope that you will want to share Jewish books with the world too. But how? How do we share the books? Let us turn now to some practical tips that make it easy to advocate for Jewish literature. And basically, supporting any genre of books means showing that there is a demand for them so that authors will be encouraged to keep writing, publishers will be encouraged to keep producing, booksellers and libraries will be encouraged to keep stocking these books. So when I promote Jewish books from a psychological perspective, I want individual readers to feel seen and to learn and grow. But at the same time, from a market perspective, I want to increase the demand for Jewish books. A super simple way to support Jewish literature is to borrow Jewish books from the library, buy them from the bookstore, online bookstores, bricks and mortar bookstores. This lets the library or the bookstore know that their community wants Jewish books and encourages them to stock more Jewish books. Sales of Jewish books, whether to customers or to libraries, shows the publishers that Jewish books are in demand and that there's a market for them, so they should publish more of them. You could go to a library or bookseller's website and rate and review Jewish books, and this will bring more attention from other readers, and that may increase the borrowing or the buying of these titles. You can suggest Jewish titles you want the library to add to their collection, or ask your local indie bookstore to order Jewish titles for you. You can ask both libraries and bookstores to create displays and host events for Jewish Book Month in November, or actually technically the 30 days leading up to Hanukkah, and in Jewish American Heritage Month in May. And this reminds local institutions that Jewish communities expect their allyship. And you can share Jewish book news with librarians and booksellers in your community. And I'll talk in a little while about how to get that news. Now, this is a suggestion form from the Palm Beach County Public Library. And I think most libraries have forms like this that you can fill out to suggest a title. So if there's a Jewish book that you can't find in the catalog, but you think it's a great one and everybody should be reading it, go ahead and tell your library about it and they can order it. Also, at my public library, Palm Beach County, there is a way for you to give stars and even write reviews of books in the catalog, which will encourage more people to read those books. So you can do that at most libraries. And in fact, you can do that not only at libraries. So let's talk a little about online advocacy. You can advocate for Jewish books without even getting up off your sofa. So like I was saying, you can rate and review books on your library website, but also you can do this, of course, at Amazon, at Barnes & Noble's website, at bookshop.org, Goodreads, any book-related website. And there's a lot you can do on social media. You can write your own reviews or just post casual comments about how you liked a book. You can follow Jewish book advocates like the Association of Jewish Libraries or the Jewish Book Council, individual Jewish authors. You can like and comment on posts, and the more interaction a post gets, the more the algorithms boost them. So even just something as simple as clicking like is doing some good in the world. And you can attend online Jewish book events like author presentations and book clubs, and like this talk I'm giving right now. So you're doing it already. Good job. I hope you will subscribe to my podcast, The Book of Life. Here's my logo right here, where I've been interviewing authors of Jewish children's literature for nearly 20 years, since 2005. I'm planning a celebration in December of 2025 for my 20th anniversary, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, my most recent episodes are a two-part series called Creature Double Feature, Anti-Semitism and the Supernatural. So I hope you will tune into those November 2024 episodes, a two-parter, with two excellent authors, Deke Moulton, who wrote a vampire book and a werewolf book, and Emmy Watanabe Cohen, who wrote a dragon book and a golem book, I'll tell you a little bit more about those books later. Also, this month, I'm having a bonus episode on November 24th, 2024, the beginning of Jewish Book Month. I will be posting an episode where I interviewed someone from the Jewish Book Council about Jewish Book Month itself. If you're not into children's literature, that's okay. You can hear all about Jewish adult fiction on Nice Jewish Books, a podcast hosted by my friend Cheryl Stahl. Sometimes you want to get off the sofa and go out into the world to interact with people in real life. So here are some ways you can support Jewish books out there in the world. The holidays are coming up. You can give Jewish books as gifts for any age. If you've read a Jewish book and you're all done with it, you can donate it to a little free library so somebody else can read it. You can go to live Jewish events, live in person, author talks at bookstores or Jewish community centers. You can take your kids to events hosted in the community by PJ Library, the nonprofit that gives out free Jewish kids' books by mail. If you have a book club, you can suggest Jewish titles, or you can join or form a specifically Jewish book club. And you can simply recommend Jewish books you've enjoyed to your friends and family. Advocacy can be that simple, and word of mouth is very powerful. So just telling somebody about a Jewish book you liked does a lot of good. Here is my friend and fellow librarian, Laura, at this summer's Association of Jewish Libraries conference. She was doing a lot of these support actions at the same time. She was attending a live event, she was buying Jewish books, and she was recommending them to other people. So I've talked a lot about sharing Jewish book news as an easy form of advocacy, but where do you hear this Jewish book news? Well, I'm going to give you a handout that has lots of links to help you with this, but just real quickly, you can look at this list. You can listen to podcasts, go to websites that review books, award announcements. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Follow book influencers, sign up for author newsletters, and just your social media feed. My social media feed is full of news about Jewish books because of the people that I follow and the organizations that I click like and follow. So let's talk about book awards. As you can see, there are many prizes for Jewish literature, both for adult and children's books, and this makes it easy to find the best new books every year. In the handout, I'm going to give you links where you can stay in the loop about all of these. I just want to shout out the Sidney Taylor Book Award from the Association of Jewish Libraries. Years ago, I was the chair of that book award committee, so I'm still a big advocate for it. It is the only award that specifically focuses on Jewish children's literature, from picture books through middle grade to young adult books. I also want to mention influencers. So as I said, I podcast about Jewish books. There are many people who blog about Jewish books, bookstagrammers who cover Jewish books on Instagram. One of my favorite influencers is this delightful Jewish teenager who goes by the name of E-Train, and he is a passionate advocate for children's literacy. He covers all kinds of books, but Jewish books are prominent in his lineup. So check out E-Train Talks online. You will love him. He is so smart and so adorable. So let's talk about some books that you are going to want to read. So first, we're going to talk about adult books. As I said, I'm a children's librarian. I mostly read kids' books for my own entertainment. So I asked my friends at the Association of Jewish Libraries to recommend some favorite adult books, and these are a few of their choices. I'm going to call out a few of them, but not all of them because I haven't actually read that many of them. But The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride, just have to point out that it has won multiple prizes from both Jewish and non-Jewish organizations. If you put all the stickers on the cover, you probably wouldn't even be able to see the title. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin has a video game angle. It's reminiscent of Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. It's definitely on my to-be-read pile. And I also want to point out Thistlefoot by Jenna Rose Nethercott, a modern fantasy fairy tale about the descendants of Baba Yaga, the famous witch from Russian folklore. The author is a folklorist and a puppeteer. I saw her at the Association of Jewish Libraries conference, and she is such a character. I can't wait to read this one. And I also want to point out a rom-com, Thank You for Sharing, by Rachel Runya Katz, a really cute rom-com starring two Jews of color as the couple in question. I want to jump down here to People Love Dead Jews, Reports from a Haunted Present by Dara Horn. What a provocative title. It's a collection of essays exploring the weird twists and turns that anti-Semitism takes, but written with heart and humor. And I also loved her short podcast series based on the book. It was called Adventures with Dead Jews. What a title, right? Another book that uses humor to deal with a difficult subject is Jews Don't Count by David Baddiel. He's a British comedian, and this book exposes the weird way in which the equity, diversity, and inclusion movement often excludes Jews. And I do want to mention the Amen Effect, Ancient Wisdom to Mend Our Broken Hearts and World by Rabbi Sharon Bruce. This book is going to make you cry, but in a good way. Okay, here's my area. This is children's books, and we've got here middle grade and young adult books, mostly middle grade. So I'm going to talk about some of my favorites, and I've podcasted about many of these. Benji Zeb is a Ravenous Werewolf by Deke Moulton. I mentioned that I interviewed her for the November two-part series on my podcast. Her other book is called Don't Want to Be Your Monster. That's the vampire one. This werewolf book, Betsy Bird, who is a very famous book reviewer at the Fuse number 8 blog, she said about this book, this isn't just a werewolf book for kids, it is the werewolf book for kids. So there you go. Across So Many Seas by Ruth Behar is a multi-generational story about a Sephardic Jewish family from the Inquisition to modern times. I interviewed her on the podcast as well this spring in 2024. Not Nothing by Gail Forman is a contemporary story about healing from trauma. It makes me want to stand up and sing. It is so good. And it's about rising to the occasion of your life. Just beautiful. It has Holocaust elements, but it's not a Holocaust book per se. And I interviewed her in October. If you would like a Jewish Narnia style story, try Tale of the Flying Forest by R.M. Romero. It is a portal fantasy with an adventure quest based on Jewish folklore. Finn and Ezra's Bar Mitzvah Time Loop by Joshua S. Levy fascinatingly has two very different Jewish kids, one Orthodox, one pretty secular, trapped together in a time loop during their bar mitzvah weekend. I interviewed Josh about his other book, The Jake Show. He has many books, but another one of his books last year. And Golem Crafters by Japanese-American Jewish author Emi Watanabe Cohen is another part 2 of my Creature Double Feature podcast series this month in November 2024. And it's got the best explanation I've ever read for what anti-Semitism feels like psychologically on the receiving end. Two Tribes by Emily Bowen Cohen is a graphic novel based on her own life as a Jewish member of the Muskogee Creek Nation. The Miracle Seed by Martin Lemelman, who is a local author here in South Florida. This is a graphic novel where he magically makes the revival of the extinct Judean date palm in Israel into a fascinating adventure. A Boy from Baghdad by Miriam Halami is a historical novel about Iraqi Jews finding refuge from persecution in Iraq by relocating to Israel. Now, here are the YA, the young adult books I wanted to mention. How to Excavate a Heart by Jake Maya Arlo is a sweet, adorable rom-com between two Jewish girls. Yes, No, Maybe So was co-authored by a Jewish author and a Muslim author, Becky Albertalli and Aisha Saeed. It's got a Jewish boy and a Muslim girl who fall for each other while doing political canvassing. And my new favorite is Night Owls by A.R. Vishny, part romance, part fantasy about two Jewish sisters who are estries, owl-shifting Jewish vampires. And they run an art house cinema in Greenwich Village. So much fun. Okay, for the youngest readers, here's some picture books. So we've got Joyful Song, a naming story by Leslie Ann Newman, an absolutely gorgeous story about a baby naming in a family with two mommies. One Small Spark by Ruth Spiro is about Tikkun Olam, the mitzvah of repairing the world. It directly addresses the reader to inspire action, and this would make a great graduation gift for any age level. Moses and the Runaway Lamb by Jacqueline Jules shows Moses more realistically with dark skin, and it also nicely lets us see Moses outside of Passover, so that's kind of cool. This Is My Shabbat by Chris Barish features a blind boy enjoying a peaceful Shabbat with his family, and it includes Jews of color, so that's a nice touch. The Tower of Life by Hannah Stiefel joins many wonderful picture book biographies being published these days, and this is the most positive Holocaust book I've ever read, about how survivor Yafa Eliak created a display at the Holocaust Memorial Museum that brought her town back to life. Even Adam and Their Very First Day by Leslie Kimmelman has gorgeous pictures and cleverly shows the creativity that the first humans would have had to use to get through life in the Garden of Eden. Hanukkah Upside Down by Alyssa Brent Weissman compares the holiday experience of Jewish cousins in New York and New Zealand. And this is probably the only existing Jewish kids book with Jewish New Zealander representation. Two New Years is another compare and contrast book. This is by Richard Ho, and it's about a Chinese Jewish family celebrating both Rosh Hashanah and Lunar New Year. Oh, by the way, I did podcast about Hanukkah Upside Down last Hanukkah in 2023, and last Rosh Hashanah in 2023, I podcasted about Two New Years. I probably should have added to this slide a book that came out this year in 2024, another Chinese Jewish book called Mixed Up Mooncakes, which is about both Sukkot and the Mid-Autumn Festival. Sharing Shalom by Daniel Sharkin is a beautiful contemporary story of allyship in the face of anti-Semitism. And what I particularly liked that most books don't seem to do, not only does it show the anti-Semitism and then the community rallying to push back, it establishes why she loves her Jewish identity before that, so that you understand what the anti-Semitism is threatening. The Greatest by Vera Hiranandani. She is a Jewish Indian American author, not American Indian, Indian American author. And this is a tribute to a beloved grandfather in a Jewish family. A Feather, a Pebble, a Shell by Miri Leshem-Pelly is a reflection on how kids feel at one with nature, and is also an ode to the natural landscape of the land of Israel. And finally, The Very Best Sukkah is a story from Uganda by Shoshana Nambi. She's the first female rabbi from the Jewish community of Uganda, and this is about her own childhood experience of celebrating the holiday of Sukkot. Whew, that's a lot of books. So there you go. There are more great Jewish books where those came from. And I want you to know that if you go to tinyurl.com/cheeringJewishBooks, you will find links to so much information. You'll find all of those books listed, and all of those tips for how you can support Jewish books. So I hope you will take that information and run with it. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to email me at bookoflifepodcast@gmail.com. And I hope you will check out my podcast, bookoflifepodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening, everybody.